Degrees of freedom, it was really a new to me phrase that I picked up from the nonlinear contingency analysis world. If you want to learn more, I am absolutely not an expert in this model, but I have learned a little bit about it and I've read some books on it. And I really think that this is something that is a really cool approach to use. And they have a Facebook group, the constructional approach. They have this. This is the book that introduced me to it. It's Nonlinear Contingency Analysis, Going Beyond Cognition and Behavior in Clinical Practice by Joe Lang. I know he has a Facebook group as well. So I encourage you to check that out. Joe Lang and other colleagues, definitely worth checking out. It's not too expensive, definitely worthwhile. In short, a core tenet of nonlinear contingency analysis is analyzing the consequences, the costs, and the benefits for all possible behaviors that can occur, not just a specific target behavior. There's a lot more to the constructional approach that I think is really valuable. Check it out. I'm going to say it again. Their Facebook group, that book I just showed. But we're going to focus specifically on this aspect of it because it blends in with degrees of freedom. We want to be looking at the whole matrix of possible behaviors. And that allows us to produce challenging behavior, the target behavior, without intervening directly. Let's look at a very simple example of me when I go to get groceries with my car. So let me do a little bit of pippity popping, and now I'm in the right spot. Let's look at this example. So let's look at 3 different options for me when I'm sitting at home, hungry, and I'm really wanting some butter pasta. If you knew me in college, yes, I still love me some butter pasta. So the behavior we're looking at is we're going to use my car and we're going to drive to the grocery store and get groceries. What are the costs of this behavior? Well, it's minimal. It's about 30 minutes round trip, and the benefits are that I get groceries. The next option is to walk to the store to get groceries. So it's moderate effort. It takes definitely more effort than walking, but not as much as running. It takes about 90 minutes round trip, and I also get groceries at the end of it. The third option I have is just to stay at home. It costs nothing. There's no effort to just stay where I am. But similarly, there's also no groceries. So 2 of these instances, I get groceries. 1, I get no groceries. Now, if you had shown me this example outside of this conversation about degrees of freedom and nonlinear contingency analysis, I would have said I have 3 options, right? I have 3 things that I could do. I could use my car, walk, or stay at home. But what about if we start to equalize the costs and the benefits, right? What about if I absolutely need groceries, right? I have no butter pasta. I have no pasta. I have no butter. I don't even have the salt that I use to salt my water. I need those groceries, right? How many choices do I have now? I only have 2, right? I can use my car or walk to the store. Staying at home no longer is an option because I need groceries. What if I'm too tired? What if I'm feeling? What if I'm in the midst of a depressive episode and I can't leave I can't muster the strength to leave my house, right? How many options do I have now? Well, I only have 1 option. You see, very quickly when we start to consider the costs of benefits of all different behaviors in a matrix, choices and things like that start to really minimize, right? Let's keep going. Stay with me. Let's talk about degrees of freedom. Right? It's a fairly simple formula, but we're going to go back to the next slide in a second. But degrees of freedom, or DOF, is simply n minus 1. So n are the choices available with similar reinforcers, similar costs, and the minus 1, and you want to have above 0 degrees of freedom. If you have more than 0 degrees of freedom, that means that there are multiple different options for you to use. So let's go back to the grocery store scenario. Let's say in that first bullet point, how many degrees of freedom do I have if I really need groceries, right? Let's say to me, the cost of a 30-minute round trip and a 90-minute round trip are generally equal, but I do absolutely need groceries. So there are 2 different choices that I could do. I could use my car, or I could walk to the store. N2 is n minus 1 is 1, so I have 1 degrees of freedom. right? So I have one different option that I can do. That's good, right? We at least want one different option. What if I am too tired to be out of my house? So how many degrees of freedom do I have if I cannot expend any effort on this behavior? The cost of any effort is too high. So I only have one option to stay at home. And so one option minus one minus one is zero. I have 0 degrees of freedom. There's nowhere I can go. It's just this one choice that I have. So let me present, before we move on, secret word for the CEUs, cappuccino. All right, cappuccino, check it out. So putting it all together, right, when you're assessing Assent, you want to have 1 or more degrees of freedom. As much as possible, I like to have at least 2 degrees of freedom. So 3 different choices with equal reinforcers and equal costs. But you want to at least have 1. So there's always an opportunity for Assent withdrawal to be chosen by the client without any coercion. Because if we go back to this scenario, right, and I absolutely need to get groceries, but my Assent withdrawal behavior is to stay at home, well, then that's not really an option because I need that reinforcer of groceries. So while it looks like I have 2 paths to take, leaving my house to get groceries or staying at home, really I only have 1 because I need groceries. So you see how the benefits being equal and the cost being equal is really important here, because if I'm a client and I'm highly motivated to access the token economy that leads to the bubbles, if I'm highly motivated for those tokens and Assent provision gives me access to more tokens and Assent withdrawal gives me no tokens, do I really have 2 options there? Is Assent withdrawal a behavior that's reinforced? If the function of my Assent behavior provision is to get bubbles and Assent withdrawal results in extinction from bubbles, is Assent withdrawal really reinforced there? Of course not. What the behavior analyst thought was 2 choices. When you look at it from a degrees of freedom angle, when you're analyzing the consequences of both behaviors in that matrix, it's actually no degrees of freedom, and their Assent withdrawal behavior is being your Assent withdrawal behavior is on extinction, right? It doesn't result in reinforcement. And that's what I said in this first example, right? Let's use the example of Assent via behavior. The Assent provision behavior leads to candy and praise from the technician who's reinforcing on an FR1 schedule for manding. Let's say we're working on manding. But a lack of Assent behavior leads the clinician just sitting there waiting for the client to do something and participate in intervention. And we could equate to planned ignoring. So in this scenario, we have Assent behavior leading to candy and praise, lack of Assent leading to planned ignoring. If the client is highly motivated for candy and praise, how many degrees of freedom are here? I already alluded to the answer, so I'm sure you know it. There's actually 0 degrees of freedom, right? There's really only one opportunity for the client to engage in. There's only one opportunity for the client to access the reinforcers that are relevant to them at this time, and that is to provide Assent. That's not what we want. We want opportunities for the client to provide Assent and be reinforced with that thing that they're looking for, and also to withdraw Assent and be reinforced with those items they're looking for. We want these things to be equal so that they never feel like they have to engage in more severe instances of behavior to escalate past the precursors to engage in more severe behavior in order to access perhaps what the Assent provision behavior was supposed to be giving them. Let's look at the enhanced choice model for a second. Let's look at the enhanced choice model before we end this, and we'll look at the concurrent change arrangement, right? So, like I said, there's 3 different options for the people participating in this research study. They could provide Assent behavior, which we'll loosely define as participating in SBT, their skills-based treatment. If they provided the Assent behavior, they were participating, that led to functional reinforcers being provided. Now, in this case, the functional reinforcers were being provided contingent on, wherever they were in SBT, maybe tolerating X amount of something that led to functional reinforcers. What about lack of assent behavior, right? So that led to the NCR zone where they had access to their functional reinforcers. That was their hangout context. So at any point, they could leave SBT, withdraw their assent, go into hangout, and access those same functional reinforcers. I'm sure you see where I'm going with this, right? They had equal benefits for assent behavior and equal benefits for lack of assent behavior. What about leaving the clinic entirely? Well, if they're going home, we can't guarantee what's going on at home, but the hope would be, and if the caregivers were coached through this process, which I'm sure they were, the hope would be that there would be functional reinforcers in the home setting as well. So now we have three different options, right? They could participate and get functional reinforcers. They could withdraw assent and go to the NCR zone, their hangout context, and get functional reinforcers. They could leave the clinic entirely and get functional reinforcers. So in this case, right, in this matrix, how many degrees of freedom are we looking at? We're looking at 2. We have 3 options. So n equals 3. 3 minus 1 is 2. That's really solid, right? That, I think, is a lot of the magic sauce that the enhanced choice model is built on. It's built on that clear assent withdrawal leading to functional reinforcers, reinforcing the assent withdrawal behavior that we talked about in section 2, with those same functional reinforcers that are provided via assent provision. All things have to be equal within the degrees of freedom calculation. And that is personally what I got wrong for a long, long time. I set up situations where I thought that I had clear concurrent chains analysis present. I even, trained the individual to identify the different concurrent chain pathways, and they had assent provision and assent withdrawal behavior. But when I actually sat back and looked at it, the assent provision, in this case, led to a lot of one-on-one attention because we were teaching in a very naturalistic environment. Like, we were in the playroom, we were doing a lot of tacting, stimulus pairing, observation procedures, and it was a lot of one-on-one attention from the technician and the client. Then the assent withdrawal behavior, if they engaged in that behavior, they were still in the playroom, but there was no attention from the technician. The technician, I told them to stay back. They withdrew their assent, so we don't want to, mess with them or bug them or anything. And then I realized that this individual was highly motivated to engage with the technician. They wanted that technician rapport back and forth. They were paired really well, and by within the assent provision, providing one-on-one attention, but then not providing it within the assent withdrawal condition. Instead of 1 degree of freedom, which I thought I had, I actually had 0 degrees of freedom. And that was once I kind of put the pieces together and really learned how to analyze assent via this as things are equal within the degrees of freedom calculation. That's when things clicked. We changed it and we saw a drop in aggression, right? Because the client no longer was fearful that they were going to lose something they valued if they withdrew assent.